Hello all, it's Nathan again. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about currency and economics, and specifically addressing what makes money valuable. So, obviously, numerous substances have been used as money throughout history, and there are lots and lots of implications from what substances you use as money. And so I want to start. This will be the first video in a few videos I make that really dig into this concept, which I find incredibly interesting and also incredibly important to understand, especially where other issues like policy making and social good and how do we make this world into the world that we all want to live in. All of these things, there is definitely an economic component to them, and a very large component of economics is currency. And so that's why I want to address this topic. So the first thing I want to talk about is what makes currency valuable. So the most basic level of this is that there are certain properties that we really like to have in a currency. So the first of these would be divisibility. If let's talk about gold, for instance. If I've got a big gold nugget, right, and I cut it in half, so the two resulting halves are equally sized, then each of those is worth exactly half of what the original gold nugget was worth. No value was lost in the cutting. So that's called divisibility, and that's a property we really like in a currency. Contrast that with diamonds, for instance. If I have a big diamond and I cut that in half, then the two halves are worth far, far less than half of the original diamond was worth, or half of the original worth of the big diamond. So you lost an enormous amount of value simply by cutting it in half. We prefer substances which are still considered valuable even though they are half as big. They're considered half as valuable as the bigger one was. And so that's divisibility. Another property would be fungibility, which sort of follows from divisibility. If I cut the big gold nugget in half and there's two gold nuggets now, and I have one and you have the other, then if we swap those across, neither of us gains or loses any value. We break completely even. And that's called fungibility. Basically, it means that given two equivalent units of the currency, you can swap them across and no value is gained or lost to either party. And part of that is just that you can find two equivalent units. Again, if we look at diamonds, diamonds are not very fungible. It is incredibly difficult to find two diamonds that have exactly the same value. And even if you can, it's a lot of work to confirm that they are exactly the same. And basically, you have to hire someone just to figure out, like, are these two diamonds worth the same amount? So that's fungibility. Another property that we really want to have is ubiquity. A currency is not very useful as a currency if a lot of people don't have it or have very easy access to it. Obviously, if I go to the store and I want to check out, and they say, oh, well, we require salt as currency, and I don't happen to have any salt on me, then I've got to go and find salt so that I can go back to the store and buy my food. That's not very desirable. I don't want to be subject to that. I would rather the store accept as currency something that I already have and that everyone else accepts as currency, so that we can gain from this network effect. Everybody is using this as currency, therefore we all use it as currency. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about the predictable supply of a currency. And this is where the hard asset people really come in, and they'll hammer on gold and silver and metals, precious metals, and say, these are the only things that can be good as currency because of they'll talk about fixed supply. Now, I don't talk about fixed supply, I talk about predictable supply because there is more gold being pulled out of the ground. It's just that happens slowly, and it happens on mostly a predictable schedule. It's random, but it's pretty rare for just somebody to find an enormous amount of gold in the ground that really disrupts the economy because there's so much more gold flowing through all of a sudden. So it's got a relatively predictable supply. And an implication of that is I want to point out an idea which I have not seen anyone else discuss, which is that all currencies subsidize something. All currencies pay for some action simply because people are using it as a currency. Now, in the case of gold, use of gold as a currency subsidizes gold mining. It's expensive to pull gold out of the ground and refine it into coins and to then actually get that out there for people to use as currency. Why do people bother doing that? Well, because the gold is valuable. Therefore, the fact that people are using gold as a currency means that they are, as an economy, subsidizing the pulling of gold up out of the ground. In the case of dollars, the creation of dollars is something that most people don't think about, but that's controlled entirely by the Federal Reserve, and they don't have any formal rules on when they get to create dollars, what they create dollars for, how many dollars they can create, and I will argue this is a huge problem, because we as an economy, by using dollars, are subsidizing the Federal Reserve to do whatever the heck they want. And we don't know what exactly they're doing. More than that, we don't even know who is doing it. We don't know who owns the Federal Reserve. It's a private bank. It happens to be the bank that controls all of dollars, but it's a private bank. We don't even know who the owners are. And that's a point that I want to make is you're using currency, or the fact that you use something as currency subsidizes somebody to produce that currency. And you are paying them to do it. Now, you as an individual aren't paying them much, but collectively across the entire economy, we're paying a great deal for them to do things. And I think it's wise for people to pay attention to what we are subsidizing with our use of a certain commodity as a currency. And that really plays back into those social good issues that I talked about at the beginning of this video. Because if you just don't want to think about how currency works, when it gets created, when it gets destroyed, and as an implication of that, what are you subsidizing when you are willing to accept this substance as currency for your work? If you don't want to think about that, that does not change the fact that your actions have an effect and that you are, in fact, subsidizing certain activities. And so I encourage people to question, what exactly am I subsidizing when I accept something as a currency? So that's the point I wanted to make in this video. Let me know in the comments if you have any interesting thoughts that come from this or any remarks, and especially let me know if you have any requests for other videos you'd like me to do in the future. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.